The chest is one of the most trained muscle groups in any gym, and one of the most consistently underdeveloped relative to the effort invested in it. The reason is not volume, not frequency, and not exercise selection. It is something happening at the mechanical level of every single representative. If this is your first time here, subscribe and share this with someone who has been training chest consistently without seeing the development that should match the work being put in. This channel breaks down the specific mechanics and biological details that most fitness content never gets precise enough to explain. There is a pattern in chest training that plays out with remarkable consistency across experience levels. Someone programs their chest sessions carefully: bench press, incline press, cable flies, dips. They hit the volume. They show up every week. They feel the sessions. They are sore the next day. And the chest, month after month, fails to develop with the fullness, thickness, and definition that the training investment should be producing. They add more exercises. They try different angles. They increase frequency. The chest continues to develop at a fraction of the rate the surrounding muscles do. The problem is not what they are doing. It is what is happening, or more accurately, what is not happening, inside each representative of every exercise they perform. A mechanical reality that most people have never had explained to them with enough precision to actually change how they train. Understanding it does not require a new program. It requires a different relationship with every representative that has been performed up until now, and every representative that follows from this point forward. The pectoral muscle and how it actually works. Before the error can be identified, the anatomy needs to be understood in enough detail to make the correction meaningful, because most people have a functional understanding of the chest that is incomplete in precisely the ways that explain why their training produces insufficient development. The pectoralis major is a large, fan-shaped muscle with two primary heads: the clavicular head, the upper portion, and the sternocostal head, the middle and lower portion that constitutes the majority of the chest's visible mass. The muscle originates from the clavicle, the sternum, and the costal cartilages of the ribs, and inserts on the humerus, the upper arm bone, through a tendon that wraps around to attach on the outer portion of the upper arm. This anatomy is critical because it defines what the pectoral muscle is actually designed to do. The primary function of the pectoralis major is horizontal adduction of the humerus, bringing the upper arm across the body toward the midline. Secondary functions include internal rotation and flexion of the humerus. This functional reality means something specific about how pressing movements load the chest, and it is where most people's understanding of chest training breaks down in ways that directly limit their development. A pressing movement, a bench press, a push-up, a dumbbell press, primarily loads the pectoral muscle through its force production against the load being pushed. But the pectoral muscle's peak mechanical advantage, the point in the movement where it is generating the most force as the primary mover, is not at the lockout of the press. It is in the portion of the movement where the humerus is moving horizontally across the body, from a position of abduction toward the midline. This means that the top portion of a standard pressing movement, the last third of the press toward lockout, is being completed primarily by the triceps, while the pectoral muscle's mechanical contribution is diminishing. Most people feel the pressing in the chest during the initial push off the chest and then experience a smooth transition to tricep dominance through the top, without ever creating the sustained pectoral tension across the full range that maximal hypertrophic stimulus requires. The scapular position error that redirects everything. Here is the specific mechanical error that explains why so many people feel their bench press in the front of their shoulders and the bottom of their triceps more than they feel it in the center of their chest, and why the chest fails to receive the stimulus that all that pressing volume is theoretically providing. Scapular position during pressing movements is the foundational variable that determines which muscle group is mechanically positioned to do the majority of the work. When the scapulae are allowed to protract, to round forward and separate, during a press, the shoulder joint moves into a position that favors anterior deltoid recruitment. The front of the shoulder is in its strongest mechanical position to push. The pectoral muscle, which requires a stable, retracted scapular foundation to express force through horizontal adduction, is mechanically compromised. Most people who feel pressing primarily in the front of the shoulder are performing the movement with protracted scapulae, rounding forward into the press rather than pressing from a position of scapular retraction and depression that stabilizes the shoulder girdle and positions the pectoral muscle as the primary force producer. The correction: retracting and depressing the scapulae before beginning any pressing movement, creating the sensation of pinching the shoulder blades together and pulling them down toward the back pockets, changes the mechanical architecture of the movement entirely. The anterior deltoid is taken out of its dominant position. The pectoral muscle is placed in a position from which it can actually produce horizontal adduction force effectively. The press shifts from a shoulder-dominant movement to a chest-dominant one, not through any change in exercise selection or load, but through a postural adjustment that takes approximately 2 seconds to establish before the first representative begins. This is why people who correct their scapular position on pressing movements for the first time consistently describe the sensation as pressing with less weight but feeling more in the chest. That experience is not a paradox. It is the accurate neurological report of the pectoral muscle suddenly being the primary mover in a movement it was previously sharing with the anterior deltoid and tricep from the first representative, the stretch stimulus, and why most people never access it. There is a dimension of chest hypertrophy that the research on muscle growth has elevated significantly in recent years, and that most chest training approaches access only partially, limiting the growth stimulus of every session by leaving the most potent portion of the representative range underutilized. The stretched position of a muscle under load, the point in the movement where the muscle is maximally lengthened while still under tension, is now understood to be one of the most potent stimuli for hypertrophy. The mechanical tension produced by a muscle being pulled toward its maximum length while simultaneously resisting a load generates a specific cellular response that promotes satellite cell activity, muscle protein synthesis, and the structural changes that constitute genuine hypertrophic growth. For the pectoralis major, the position of maximum stretch under load occurs at the bottom of a pressing movement, when the humerus is in maximum horizontal abduction. The elbows are at or below shoulder level, and the chest is in the position of greatest lengthening. This is the most important position in the entire representative for chest hypertrophy. And it is the position most people rush through, most commonly shortchange in range, and most frequently use momentum to exit rather than muscular control to resist. The standard bench press, performed with a barbell to chest contact and a controlled descent, reaches a reasonable stretch position for the sternocostal head of the pectoral. Incline dumbbell pressing, which allows the elbows to travel behind the plane of the body at the bottom, reaches a deeper stretch for the clavicular head. Cable flies performed from a high pulley position reach a stretch across the middle fibers that pressing movements do not replicate. Dips with a forward lean and deep descent create a significant stretch stimulus for the lower fibers that is irreplaceable in chest development programs. The chest training that maximally stimulates hypertrophy is not the training that moves the most weight through the shortest comfortable range. It is the training that consistently loads the pectoral muscle in its lengthened position, through its full available range, with enough control in the descent to actually use the stretch rather than bouncing through it. The mind-muscle connection and why it is not optional for chest development. The final layer of why chest training underperforms relative to its volume involves the neurological connection between intent and muscular recruitment, and it is more significant in chest training than in almost any other muscle group, because the pectoral muscle is one of the most susceptible to being bypassed by stronger, more neurologically dominant surrounding muscles. The anterior deltoid and the tricep are both stronger and more neurologically accessible in most people than the pectoral muscle, particularly in individuals who have not previously trained with specific attention to chest recruitment. In a pressing movement where the intent is simply to move the weight, the nervous system recruits from the hierarchy of available muscle in the most efficient pattern for task completion. The task is moving a weight from point A to point B. The muscles best suited for that task, often the deltoid and tricep, are prioritized. The pectoral muscle is recruited additionally but not maximally. The pressing happens. The chest is involved. But the stimulus delivered to the pectoral specifically is diluted by the contribution of muscles that were not the intended target. Research examining EMG activity during pressing movements has consistently shown that directing conscious attention to the pectoral muscle, actively intending to feel the contraction in the chest, focusing on the sensation of the fibers shortening during the press, produces measurably higher pectoral muscle activation than directing attention to the outcome of the movement. The intent changes the recruitment. The recruitment changes the stimulus. The stimulus determines the adaptation. If this finally explains something that months of chest training never resolved, subscribe and share this with someone whose bench press numbers are going up but whose chest is not following them. Every video on this channel is built to get specific enough to actually change the outcome, not just describe the problem.